Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Kunjabi Gopi Jana Bharabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamunatira Bhanachadi Yamunatira Bhanachadi Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamunatira Bhanachadi Yamunatira Bhanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astatara Satasi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We'll chant together text 49, Canto 10, Chapter 50. Iti samantraya Bhagavan Durgam Dvadasha Yojanam Atak Samudre Nagaram Kritsna bhutam achikarat iti samantya bhagavan durgam dvadasha yojanam antak samudre nagaram kritsnad bhutam achikarat iti samantriya bhagavan durgam dvadasha yojanam antak samudre nagaram kritsnad bhutam achikarat iti samantriya bhagavan durgam dvadasha yojanam atak samudre nagaram kritsnad bhutam achikarat iti samantriya bhagavan durgam dvadasha yojanam antak samudre nagaram iti samantriya bhagavan durgam dvadasha yojanam iti. Thus, Samantriya, consulting Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Durgam, a fortress, Dvadasha Yojanam, 12 yojanas, about 100 miles. Attaha, within, Samudre, the sea, Nagaram, a city, Kritsna, with everything, Adbhutam, wonderful, Achikarat, he had made. After thus discussing the matter with Balaram, the Supreme Personality of Godhead had a fortress, 12 yojanas in circumference, built within the sea. Inside that fort, he had a city built containing all kinds of wonderful things. So I have the commentary from our acharyas. I'm going to just cover a few things and we'll go on to the next description of Dwarka. 12 yojanas in the BBT, word for word, around 100 miles, or about 100 miles. Commonly, at least Shadaputa writes, and Prabhupada writes, 1 yojana is about 8 miles. And even more specifically, rounded out, it comes closer to 8.5. But 8 times 12 is about 100. And that's the circumference. We're going to hear shortly what the diameter was. So it apparently, like a circular, Durga, we know who Durga is. But Durga means fort or fortress. So the material world is overseen by Durga, and then this other Durga is a transcendental city. And iti samantriya Bhagavan. Well, he consulted with Balaram, who's Bhagavan, and then the other Bhagavan, Krishna, took action. Now, Krishna doesn't need to consult Balaram. That you know the circumstance. There's armies coming from two directions, the northern direction and the eastern direction. Kalyabana coming from the north. And Jarasandha coming from the east. And Krishna's considering, it's pastime, but he's considering, the Yadus may be at risk. The Yadus may be at risk. And so he consults Balaram what to do. Snap decision. Let's protect the Yadu dynasty members by transporting them to another place. So it doesn't say how long this took, because generally building a city that's 100 miles in circumference, it's going to take a while. But apparently it happened in a jiffy. Doesn't say the time sequence. Here's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. He built a fortress within the ocean measuring 12 yojanas. Within the fort, Krishna built a city. It wasn't Krishna, it was Vishvakarma, but Krishna had it done. Jiva Goswami writes, the city measured 12 yojanas within the sea. Its outer portions measured 18 yojanas, according to other sources. Thus, it was 30 yojanas in diameter. So 30 times 8. 30 times 8. 240. It's a big island. 240 miles in diameter. Huh? That's 240 miles? Really? More or less, okay. Jiva Goswami continues, he had Vishvakarma make the city, in which all objects were astonishing. That's this Adbhuta. Kritsna, with everything. Adbhutam. Wonderful. Everything was wonderful. And Chi Karat. He did it, but he had it done. So now I'm going to go on to, this is what was done. Texts 50 to 53. In the construction of that city could be seen the full scientific knowledge and architectural skill of Vishvakarma. There were wide avenues, commercial roads, and courtyards laid out on ample plots of land, semicolon. There were splendid parks and also gardens stocked with trees and creepers from heavenly planets. The gateway towers were topped with golden turrets touching the sky, and their upper levels were fashioned with crystal quartz. The gold-covered houses were adorned in front with golden pots and on top with jeweled roofs. and their floors were inlaid with precious emeralds. Beside the houses stood treasury buildings, warehouses, stables for fine horses, all built of silver and brass. Each residence had a watchtower and also a temple for its household deity. Filled with citizens of the four social orders, the city was especially beautified by the palaces of Sri Krishna, the Lord of the Yadus. Now, he hasn't married yet. He doesn't have queens and whole thing going on. Doesn't give detail. And the BBT purport reads, Srila Sridhar Swami explains that the state highways, that's the wide avenues, were in front and the secondary roads behind. Doesn't say in front of what and behind what. And between them were courtyards. Chatvarani, courtyards. Within these courtyards were surrounding walls. And within the walls stood golden residences, atop which shone crystal watchtowers crowned with golden pots. Thus, the buildings were multi-storied. The word vastu indicate that the houses and buildings were constructed on ample plots of land with plenty of room for green areas. Here's additional. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur writes, in that city was seen the knowledge of Vishwakarma, manifest as his skill in architecture. This is described in 3.5 verses. It was constructed with main roads, side roads, yards, and houses, not extending beyond their designated areas. There were stables of silver, brass, and iron, and houses with golden kalashas and spires of rubies and other jewels. It had temples and towers. The city became especially beautiful with the residence of Krishna, Yadudeva. Now again, he hasn't moved there yet, what to speak of married. But Jiva Goswami writes, these verses show the astonishing objects of the city. For certain, one could see that the knowledge and skill of craftsmanship of Vishwakarma, it reached its height in this city since he attained the highest abilities by the mercy of the Lord. The buildings such as stables are described with their ornaments. The udyanas had mainly flowers, and the upavanas had mainly fruit. The stables are made of brass and iron. The city was filled with people of the four varnas. Yadu-Deva refers to Krishna, Balaram, Vasudeva, Ugrasena, and others. So the living quarters of not just Krishna, but living quarters of all the Yadu Devas. The living quarters should be understood as follows. Paragraph. It was surrounded by the sea. To create obstacles, there were then moats. The interior to this, There was seawater bordered by land on the four sides of the city for recreation. Then there were fortress walls on the corners and between as well. There were jeweled turrets with golden peaks on which were gold spheres with flags. There were gates in the four directions. On top of the gates, there were rooms with clear crystal walls for looking outside. Within the fort, there were areas containing flower gardens and orchards, as well as wells and water tanks. Within the area of gardens, there were temples. Within that area, there were stables, grain storehouses, etc. Then, interior to that, in the east, there were houses of Brahmanas. In the west were the houses for Shudras. In the north were houses for Vaishyas. And in the south were houses for Kshatriyas. In the center, facing the Sudharma hall, were the houses of Krishna, Balaram, Vasudeva, and Ugrasena. The houses had emerald floors, and on top were turrets with golden pots shining brilliantly. Beginning from the hall, there were roads radiating outwards with side roads. Now here is mentioned the Sudharma hall, and elsewhere it's described that Indra was really enthusiastic to see Dwarka being manifest. So he made lots of donations. And one of those donations was the Sudharma hall. Now there's other descriptions that when Krishna, at the request of Indra to get help, this is chronologically much later, Narakasura was on a universal conquest, and one of the places he tried his conquest program was in the heavenly realm. And he defeated the demigods, and he stole many things. One of those celebrated many things was the earrings of Aditi. Doesn't say how he did it, but it just says he did it. And some items belonging to Varuna and many other things. So Indra approached Krishna and asked Krishna to help. This is when Krishna's in Dwarka. And so Krishna agreed. And he went with Satyabhama to give her some excitement. Went on the back of Garuda and did what he did. He fought the Mura demon. He killed Narakasura. He married the 16,100 princesses who were captive by Narakasura. And then Krishna went back to the heavenly realm with Satyabhama to return Aditi's earrings and the other things that were stolen. And when Satyabhama was there, that's when she asked for the Parijata tree, and Indra said no. There was some disagreement there, and Indra was defeated. And at that time, in this other account, it is said that that's when Krishna not only took the Parijata tree, but he took the Sudharma assembly hall. So our acharyas describe that these two different accounts of when the Sudharma assembly hall made it to Dwarka have to do with different days of Brahma, or Kalpa Beta, different days of Brahma when the pastime flows like this, and another time the pastime flows like that. But the Sudharma assembly hall was from heaven, and many other embellishments were provided by Indra to make Dwarka like super opulent. Now, because soon is coming Krishna Janmashtami, it's appropriate or suitable that we can also consider that Krishna doesn't appear, yet he appears. He's unborn, but he's born. There's like a lot of discussion about that in relation to Queen Kunti's prayers, the unborn is born, etc. And different people have different ways of understanding that. Kunti lists some of them. Similarly, Dwarka is constructed, yet is eternal. We should understand the abode of the Dham of the Supreme Lord is eternal. Dwarka is eternal, yet Dwarka was constructed. And the service of constructing was given to Vishwakarma, and the circumstances, what we already said. Two armies coming in two different, massive armies coming from two different directions. So orchestrated by Krishna to establish the next segment of his pastimes, from Krishna to Mathura, from Mathura to Dwarka. And of course, these are expansions of Krishna. The Vasudeva Krishna is Krishna's expansion, from whom the original Swami Bhagavan Krishna, all things come, including Vasudeva Krishna. But so that's a detail. Krishna's Krishna. And Krishna in Dwaraka is Krishna's expansion. And the associates of Krishna are expansions of the original personalities. Here's a detail. This is from Laghu Bhagavatamrita, Rupa Goswami. Just to emphasize this point, there's the original source of everything, and there's expansions of that original source of everything. So we'll speak about Balaram, and then we'll speak about Krishna, because they're eternally associated with one another. As we know, with Krishna Janmashtami, it was said at the time of the marriage of Devaki with Vasudeva, and Devaki's cousin brother, Kamsa was taking Devaki to her next home. A voice from the sky, the eighth child of Devaki will kill you, so he wanted to kill Devaki before that eighth child was born. Vasudeva convinced him, I'll give you all the children. It's not your sister or cousin sister that's to kill you. It's the eighth child, so I'll give you all the children. So when the seventh child was conceived in the womb of Devaki, that's when Krishna arranged for Yogamaya to transfer the seventh child of Devaki from the womb of Devaki to the womb of Rohini. Correct? So far? Rupa Goswami in Laghu Bhagavatamrita says that that's the original Sankarshan of the spiritual world. What's the original Sankarshan of the spiritual world? Krishna, it's not chronological, but it's a source, and that which emanates from the source description, an ontological description. Balaram is Krishna's first expansion, and Balaram expands as Sankarshan of the spiritual world in Goloka. And then from Sankarshan, the other Chaturvyuha members. So Rupa Goswami writes, that the child that was in the womb of Devaki was the original Sankarshan. But let's remember, Balaram was already in the womb of Revati. How's that? When Revati was pregnant, Vasudeva sent Revati to be in the care of Nanda Maharaj because he didn't trust Kamsa. So Revati was already pregnant. Well, not Revati, Rohini, excuse me, Rohini. Rohini was already pregnant, one of Vasudeva's wives. Vasudeva had a lot of wives. I was researching this recently. 18 wives. Rohini was one of them. When he sent Rohini, he sent the other 16 wives. So 17 wives went to Gokul. At least Rohini was, for sure, was in Nanda's care. Doesn't say about the other 16. But so Rohini was already pregnant. Rupa Goswami writes, that Rohini was pregnant with the expansion of Sankarshan. So now we have two Sankarshans. Rohini, pregnant with the Vishnu form, Vishnu expansion. What does that mean, Vishnu expansion? According to a text that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu refers to, the forms of Vishnu have symbols of Vishnu in their hands. And according to the position of those symbols of Vishnu in the hands, there's 24 different names, because the combination of those symbols of Vishnu make 24 possibilities. So that form of Vishnu, which has the symbols of Vishnu in his hand that correspond with Sankarshan, that's the child that was born in the womb of Rohini, was conceived in the womb of Rohini. You with me? Lochan, you with me? Kinda. We have two Balarams. Rohini is carrying a child who will become her child, Balaram. Devaki was also carrying Balaram. So there's two Balarams. And the identity of those two Balarams is, one is the original Sankarshan of the spiritual world, Devaki, and the other is a Vishnu expansion, Sankarshan, in the womb of Rohini. So when Yogamaya transferred the seventh child of Devaki to the womb of Rohini, the two Sankarshans merged or became one Sankarshan. And thus, Balaram Sankarshan was born to Rohini. all of that is a detail. It's interesting detail, but the main point is there's the original from which everything comes, and the other things that come, the angsas or expansions, are non-different, yet they're not the fullness, they're not the original. Like Krishna, Swami Bhagavan Krishna. The Swami Bhagavan Krishna appears in Vrindavan. Swami Bhagavan Krishna appears in Vrindavan as the son of Nanda and Jasoda. And Vrindavan is eternal. The abode of the Lord, the form of the Lord, the qualities of the Lord, the pastimes of the Lord. They're described as if they're within time, but they're not. They're eternal. It's a mystery, not discernible by material calculation. Krishna is unborn and he's born. The abode of the Lord is eternal, but it appears to be manifest, like Dwarka. And the form of Krishna, who's in Dwarka, is not the Swami Bhagavan Krishna form. He's an expansion of the original Krishna. Vasudeva Krishna is an expansion of Swami Bhagavan Krishna. Because Swami Bhagavan Krishna is the source. It's not to say that Vasudeva Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, is not Krishna. He's Krishna. He's Krishna's expansion. Who's Krishna? Krishna's expansions are Krishna. There, in one of, I recently was reading, became acquainted with a writing of Raghunath Das Goswami, where he expresses in an extreme way his attachment to Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan, and particularly his attachment to Srimati Radharani in his spiritual identity, particularly attached to Srimati Radharani. Now, to be particularly attached to Srimati Radharani means attached to Krishna, but particularly attached to Srimati Radharani. So he writes, if Krishna were to leave Vrindavan and go to Dwarka, now he expands, but if Krishna leaves Vrindavan and goes to Dwarka and gives me a personal invitation to come be with him in Dwarka, I wouldn't go. I would refuse. But if Srimati Radharani, if for some inexplicable reason she went to Dwarka and she asked me to come, I'd immediately come. Faster than Garuda would carry me. It's a poetic expression. Of course, Radharani doesn't leave Vrindavan. The original Radharani doesn't leave Vrindavan. The original Krishna doesn't leave Vrindavan. So if the original Krishna doesn't leave Vrindavan, expands himself as Vasudeva Krishna, that's not where Raghunath Das's attachment is, because they're not different, but they're different. The mood of love in Vrindavan is special. Those who are elevated, like Raghunath Das Goswami is elevated, they understand these distinctions, and they're particularly attached to the original feature. So we're reading chapter 50 of Canto 10. Krishna's now in Mathura, soon to go to Dwarka. And the abode of Dwarka is eternal. I mean, it's eternal in the sense that it's eternally existing. It's not manifest in time. But the Leela shows manifesting in time, and the Leela also shows withdrawing of the whole massive city 30 yojanas in diameter, 240 miles in diameter, and nearly 100 miles in circumference. And then one more thing. Even if you were to calculate within that dimension, worldly dimension, it's still, the math doesn't work. Mathematically, how many palaces and how much space did those palaces occupy? And what to speak of the palaces of Krishna, all the other residences of everybody else. How many everybody else's were there? I forget the number. There's a verse in the Bhagavatam stated by Shukadeva Goswami that just Ugrasena himself, one of the Yadu Devas, is the king, Ugrasena. He had how many bodyguards? Do you remember? Sunila Madhava? 10 million, something like that, bodyguards. That's a lot of bodyguards. And then they have wives, and they have families, and they have homes, and they have servants, and they have, how's all that going to fit into Dwarka? The numbers don't work. So worldly people will just, dismiss it. But Shukadeva Goswami is not interested in fantasy. It's not Harry Potter. It's, it's transcendental reality. So there's dimensions given, just like there's dimensions of the soul, 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. We heard that so many times. But you can't give a material measurement. Or the super soul is the size of the thumb. But there's no material dimension of things that are spiritual. So this is a spiritual place. And so there's dimensions for worldly inspection. But even the worldly inspection, the numbers don't work. It's a spiritual place. And within that spiritual place, this is the key to understanding the mystery of Krishna doesn't appear, but he appears. Or the abode of Dwaraka is eternal, but it's manifest and then withdrawn. As there's inconceivable and unlimited spiritual potencies of Krishna. So Krishna is manifesting his potencies through the medium of a Leela. He's ready. Dwaraka Leela pastimes, ki jai. And it's spectacular. It's adbhuta. It's wonderful. Everything. Not just heavenly wonderful, but transcendentally wonderful. Vishwakarma gets a service to do for Krishna, and Krishna empowers him to do it transcendentally. Again, how long did it take? Who can say? There's no information about how long it took. It couldn't take too long. How long did it take to build a building? Gosh, long time. Long time. Long time. Think of any building. Anyway, any building. The Naperville Temple is being built. It's a long time. Understandably. So how can you build a city? And meanwhile, the issue that's going on is there's two armies, massive armies. So it happened in a jiffy, because Krishna had to come back and then deal with the armies. So it's time and space. The point is this: time and space are in Krishna's pastimes don't conform to our experience of time and space, which is quite okay, because he has unlimited and inconceivable potencies. To a worldly inspection, not possible. Not possible. Yet it's not only possible, it's what happened. It's not fiction. And all these amazing features, roofs made of emeralds, and floors made of rubies, and stables for horses made of silver. Come on. But Krishna is the source of everything, no problem. When Maya Danava was requested by Krishna to build an assembly hall for Yudhisthira and Indraprastha, it took some time. And he said he knew where he could get the ingredients. Now Krishna didn't need to have him go get the ingredients. It was part of a pastime. But Maya Danava went and gathered the ingredients, then built the assembly hall in Indraprastha in a very mystical way. So the point is, the pastimes of Krishna are very charming. How he does, we can't understand, other than its inconceivable potencies, and his inconceivable potencies do inconceivable things. But it's also very variegated. It doesn't move in a straight line, point A to point B. It's not like that. It's very charming. So hearing these charming features of Krishna's pastime, the charming features of Dwarka, it's a fact for a faithful devotee is, how wonderful is my Krishna. Inconceivable, incomprehensible, quite astonishing, adbhuta, very wonderful. That gives impetus to appreciating and loving Krishna, and giving the mind some of the details to think about Krishna, just like in chapter 10 Bhagavad Gita. After Krishna explains who he really is, and after Arjuna accepts who he really is, Arjuna asks Krishna to give him ways by which Arjuna can always remember him. And then what Krishna does is he describes his vibhutis. Vibhutis means his opulences in this world. Vibhuti is a very particular word. It's an expansion of that which is spiritual into the material realm. It's a partial expansion in another way of language. Like a fish, I'm sharks. Or of lust, I am Kandarpa, the demigod in the heavenly realm. Kandarpa is a vibhuti. And it's a way to remember Krishna. So what to speak of remembering Krishna through his vibhutis? This is Krishna's abode. This isn't just a vibhuti. This is the all opulence. We're hearing a description of Krishna's eternal abode being manifest as a service by Vishwakarma, so that Krishna can go enjoy another set of pastimes with another set of devotees. Because their devotees are all variegated, just as Krishna is complete. Is there something missing within Krishna? No. And so there are devotees that have different devotees, not just material people, but devotees that have different moods of love. So Krishna is facilitating their mood of love in this world through his pastimes. How wonderful is Krishna. Okay. 8:25. Let's see if there's some discussion.
My mind is going. Okay, so Balaram was in the womb of Devaki, and then Yogamaya transferred him to the womb of
Rohini.
Rohini. But when that transfer was synchronized, it wasn't Balaram. That's what you're saying?
What was the last part?
Huh?
Say the last part again clearer.
You said that it was expansion of Balaram
Yes.
that was transferred to.
More precisely, the original Balaram was transferred to an expansion, to merge together with an expansion of the original Balaram. The original Balaram was in the womb of Devaki, and the expansion of Balaram was already within the womb of Rohini.
What was the purpose of, the transfer? What was the purpose of, Balaram's expansion?
It's a pastime. You want to know the purpose? He, Balaram, appears as the son of Rohini. So he's Rohini Nandana. That's his name. And Rohini, in the pastime, has her spiritual counterpart in the spiritual world. Rohini Nandana is the son of, just as Yasoda Nandana. Krishna is the son in Goloka Vrindavan. In Goloka Vrindavan, not just in the Leela that's manifest once in the day of Brahma, but in the eternal Goloka Vrindavan. Krishna is Nanda Nandana and Yasoda Nandana. And Balaram is Rohini Nandana. So he appeared first in her womb. An expansion of the original. Because the pastimes here are an extension of the eternal pastime. They're displayed here for the vision and audition of those of us in this world. And it's pretty attractive. I mean, it's mysterious. So your question is, what was the purpose? It's just his pastime. What's the purpose of a pastime? Well, behind a pastime, what's the purpose? Krishna's pleasure. You could say enjoying, but Krishna is enjoying. Balaram does what Krishna enjoys. So they're brothers. They're both sons of Devaki. And Rohini has some service too. A parental affection, love. And there's others. Here's another detail. How many wives did Vasudeva had? He had 18 wives. The two principal ones, Devaki, Rohini. That means there's 16 others. Those 16 others had affection, parental affection for both Krishna and Balaram. Although neither Krishna nor Balaram appeared as their son. So there's differences of love, even within parental affection. And one can assume those 16 are also diverse in their relationship. The details I'm unaware of, maybe written somewhere. But the principle is there's varieties of love. So, the purpose is loving pastimes with Krishna's devotees or with Rohini, so she could have that motherly affection. And just, it fits with the pastime. She was pregnant. For her protection, she was sent to the care of Nanda. So she, Rohini, being in Vrindavan, could experience all of Vrindavan's pastimes with Krishna and Balaram. When Krishna and Balaram left, Vrindavan, Rohini went to Dwarka. Yasoda and Nanda didn't go to Dwarka. Later, Rohini went to Dwarka, from Mathura to Dwarka. So she, Rohini, had first-hand experience of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Not only with Balaram, but with all the other cowherd boys and gopis. So she is in a unique position. It's part of the flavor of the variegatedness of Krishna's pastimes. She's a very special personality. So the purpose, she has a special service to render and a special love to be reciprocated with. And it's nice to appreciate that variety of loving exchange. Not cookie cutter, it's not stale, it's not boring.
Sometimes you can't mentally figure it out, but then you start to feel it, feel the pastimes, the energy from that,
Just by hearing. Subal.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. On the same subject, when Krishna and Balaram were taken by Akrura, they enter in the Yamuna, and then we know that Vasudeva, Krishna, and Anantashesha was witnessed by Akrura. Now, we know that Krishna doesn't live in Vrindavan, but Vasudeva lives in Vrindavan. Question is, is there Balaram, Vrindavan Balaram, like we worship Krishna Balaram in Vrindavan.
Yeah.
Is there a feature, is that original feature of Balaram similar than Krishna stays in Vrindavan and then something?
The detail I've not read anywhere, but in principle, sure. He's eternally in Vrindavan as Krishna is eternally in Vrindavan. As Nanda and Yasoda are eternally in Vrindavan. And when the pastime is that Krishna and Balaram leave, then it's an expansion of Balaram that leaves.
So the Sankarshan feature leaves. So when we say the original Sankarshan, that's Balaram.
Yes.
And that's possibly the Vrindavan Balaram that stay.
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, it's beautiful. And then also very interesting that you mentioned that Rohini is more, she's a Dwarka Vasi. So different than Yasoda.
She resided in Dwarka just as Krishna resided in all three places. She resided in all three places. So we don't hear much about this feature, that feature, and the other feature of Rohini, but we can understand the principle, same principle applies.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So it's hard for me to conceive. It's easier for me to conceive that there can be expansions of Krishna and Balaram but it's harder for me to conceive that in the pastimes of Chaitanya Charitamrita, like Advaita Acharya is Mahavishnu and Sadashiva together. Like it's one person with two personalities, or like expansions of two personalities in one person. So if you could say something about it.
Yeah, yes, it's difficult to understand. And one of the ways of understanding that makes it a little easier to understand is expansions or vibhutis, partial expansions or vibhutis, because Mahavishnu is a kala expansion of the original, Swami Bhagavan Krishna. So then that Mahavishnu, who is a kala, can have his expansions. And those expansions can be invested simultaneously within personalities. Not like there's two Vishnu tattvas within the same form, or two Jiva tattva. Anyway, it's not, there's different tattvas. It's one entity being conducted by features that are expansions of the original. And that's the personality. It's to understand, say it negatively, to understand differently is incomplete. To understand who is Advaita Acharya, using that particular example, is incomplete to say he's this or he's that. He's in Vishnu Tattva category, that doesn't change, but in manifesting his mood of love and his personality and his words and his activities, the complete picture is he's a manifestation of these combined originals, or expansions of the combined original. The term vibhuti works for jivas, and for Vishnu Tattva, the better word than vibhuti is angsas, or expansions. So one entity can be embodying simultaneously two different features of those angsas. It's higher technology for sure. But it's an incomplete understanding without the combination of. Is that all right? What?
I feel my understanding is a little bit better than where I started. So Sadashiva's vibhutis are also simultaneously manifest in...
Who?
Sadashiva's vibhutis are also simultaneously manifest in Advaita Acharya.
I'm not following. You following what she's saying?
She said that in the case of Advaita Acharya, Sadashiva's vibhutis are also manifest.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, correct. And how? Voila. And if it's voila, it doesn't mean it can't be something else in addition. Krishna Archana, you have something? No? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, okay.
Guru Maharaj, about these vibhutis, especially when you mention in relationship to the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita,
Yeah.
the Krishna explains. And you mentioned something that, it captured my attention, that Krishna, the vibhutis, is like a spiritual energy manifested in them.
It's not just spiritual energy, but spiritual personality.
Now, when Krishna says a shark and says a lion and says a mountain and all these different aspects that are material manifestations that are abduta, that are wonderful, how exactly it works in terms of, he also says this is just a spark of my splendor, but how exactly that manifestation of his vibhuti it takes that shape of a material, manifestation.
You want to know how exactly is a technology question. And the unlimited and inconceivable Supreme Lord manifests in his own way. He invests potencies in different entities according to his desire. And then they carry that potency. Just taking this particular example, Vishvakarma is a demigod architect. So he's got skill. Krishna specifically empowered him, not just using his demigod skill, to make something transcendental, most wonderful, beyond anything he's ever done before, because he has that specific empowerment from Krishna. So, in a similar way. Srila Prabhupada ki